Jellyfish are bioluminescent, which means they can produce their own light, which is really good for attracting prey and getting rid of predators. Today on the Jellyfish Manifesto, we have a special guest. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is DiAnne Karas. Where am I supposed to look? To the camera, thank you. Clearly, they're not very experienced at this.
You're fine.
DiAnne Karas, thank you.
She is an author, and we are very lucky to have you here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
So what made you want to start writing books?
On my 70th birthday, my son, who was 50 at the time, said to me, he handed me a book, and I said, "What's this?" And he said, "It's a book I got at the Goodwill." I said, "Oh, okay." And he says, "Well, it's got your words all over it. When are you going to write your book, Mother?" So I said, "Well, let me think. I have a week off in August. Could I do it then?" And he said, "I don't know." And my son is a highly published journalist, a war
really?
correspondent for 20 years, photographed war before it was history, is crazy good at what he does. And he said, "I don't know. Can you write a book in a week?" And I said, "Well, if I don't do it then, I never will. So yeah, I guess I can." So it was actually 10 days. And I told myself I couldn't do anything else until I had written 10 pages, because it was going to be 100 pages, 10 pages. That's what I researched was the average size. So I just started writing. I had no idea where it was going to go. And let me tell you something. Writing a book is like making a baby. Publishing a book is like hard labor. It's no fun.
Yeah, I've tried to write a couple books before, and I can't get past the first chapter. So you're doing a lot better than I could. Is there a certain thing that you like writing about the most?
Well, I realized that I had a very exotic life. And there were life lessons that I learned along the way, and they were useful to other people. And what I realized is that my life was laced with tragedy. And if I could figure out ways to navigate that tragedy, maybe that would be helpful to other people. But I felt that if I didn't engage in what was going to make a difference to other people, then what difference did my life make?
Right.
So one of the things that I love to say is all of our getting in life comes from our giving. So, but if we focus on getting, if it's giving to get, then that's manipulative. But if we're giving to give, then that's honorable. So when we recognize things that we have learned, we can gift it to someone else that it may be useful for.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the best storytellers have a history of tragedy. And it sucks to say because you don't wish that upon anybody,
Right.
But I feel like it definitely helps have different points of view, which can obviously make the story wider. You know what I mean? Do you have a question?
Yeah, how many
I don't want to be
books
the only
have
one
you
asking.
published?
So this is my first one. So this
Okay.
one is called So When Does It Get Easier? How to Turn Tragedy to Triumph. But it's part of a series, and the series is called the Grace and Gratitude series. And one of the things that I've learned in life, and this is especially true since the pandemic, and sometimes we have to have agreements or things that we don't talk about. Sometimes it's not profitable because all we're going to do is argue. But when we can give each other a space of grace when things are dicey, a little tension, and I think if we can maintain the position that nobody has a monopoly on truth. And I'm now 77 years old, and there are things that I think are true. I could be wrong. I don't care if I'm wrong. They work for me. But something else might work for someone else. And that doesn't mean that they're right and I'm wrong. It just means we have a different perspective or we're at a different place in our journey. So I think giving each other a space of grace is very useful,
Yeah.
kind and livable.
Yeah, I love that. So you said publishing is difficult. Did you find a publishing company or did you self-publish? What was that like?
I self-published. I spent $12,000 to do selfpublishing.com, and they helped me I did a little research in terms of the production of the book, and they helped me with all the part. I did the parts that I could, and then they helped me do the other parts. So,
what made you choose the use the selfpublishing.com?
I probably didn't. I may or may not have done enough research, but of course, I went on their website. I did some preliminary conversation, and I had a deadline in mind, and I felt like I just need to get it done, and all the other parts didn't matter to me. What mattered was that I got it done, and I needed someone to help me keeping the project moving forward, because I didn't want to, Well, and I also had about 3 years ago, I was either delusional or it was a divine intervention, one or the other, and I don't care. But it was very clear to me that, and I had a practice as a holistic financial advisor. I have 5 degrees. This is my 6th professional career.
That's awesome.
And I realized it became very clear to me that I had a mission. And the mission was to get all 5 of the books that I had written published, to do not 1, not 2, not 3, but 10 TED Talks and 1 international speaking tour. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I like that. But I love my clients so much. And I couldn't figure out how to take care of my clients and do this divinely inspired project. And then a series of events happened. And I even went so far as to not make appointments with my clients on Mondays and Fridays so that I could have a 4-day weekend to work on the books and the projects, right? Well, I just end up working on my practice 7 days a week instead of 3 or 4 or 5, And so there were a series of events that happened, and all of a sudden, I found myself fired from my job.
Jeez.
And it wasn't exactly the way I wanted to see this project come to pass, but I said, okay, you have my attention. I will focus on this project. And because I felt convicted in my heart that I was not delusional, I made up my mind I was going to make it happen. I'd say, okay, I have no more excuses. It's happening. So book 1 now I'm working on when you have the rough draft is one thing, getting it ready for publish. But meanwhile, I've been inspired with 2 others that just are crazy. I was on a walk I have a personal assistant, and I was on a walk with her, and I had where I live, there's a pretty little park, and there's beautiful trees, and I had this picture of an outhouse in the woods, and a picture of the outhouse with toilet paper coming out. And here's the design. Do you want to come pee with me? And these are more inspirationally oriented, so it's pray, plan, and praise, and it's part of the Grace and Gratitude series. But that wasn't even in the original 5. And then I've got another one that I'm working on, and it's like, so are we there yet? And it's about, have you ever been on a ride in a car with your family, and the kids are we there yet? Are we there yet? Or people are getting anxious, and I realize that it's really, for me, what helps me is like, just relax. You're not in the driver's seat.
Right.
I mean, you're not driving this. Someone else is driving this. Just relax. Stay calm. Because if we don't stay calm, we don't hear that still small voice within us to know what is right. You got to listen to your gut. Your gut is the most valuable thing you've got. And when you don't listen to your gut, you miss really important stuff. So we got to listen to our gut. So meanwhile, I keep getting inspired with, the book cover was the last thing I did on the first book. Now I'm doing the book covers first, or I start writing and producing, and it's like, oh, I know the book cover, but I also understand the process a little bit better. So
Right.
Yeah.
It's really been an amazing journey.
You mentioned doing TED Talks.
Uh-huh.
What was kind of the process of getting involved in that?
Well, I haven't done any yet.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea. I'm not driving this bus. It'll come to me when I need to know.
For some reason, I thought it sounded like you said you had already done it.
No, I'm sorry. I
You're
did
fine.
not mean to mislead you. Not yet, but it's on the journey.
So if you could do a TED Talk, what is one thing that you would want to talk about?
Well, I think turning tragedy to triumph is probably the most critical thing, because who do we know in life that doesn't have a tragedy? I mean, we all go through things that are challenging. So when we have to navigate them, who wants to be destroyed by their tragedy? If tragedy is a part of life, who wants to be destroyed by that? So I think that when we look at, once again, how can we make a difference? But that's my thinking, and I don't know yet. I do not know how this is going to unravel. But let me tell you, can I give you a little bit of my backstory?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a foster home in New York City, and it wasn't safe. And my first life lesson was my job was to keep another little girl in the foster home safe, and I was 3. I don't think I ever had a childhood. I think I was a grown-ass woman from the get-go. And to keep her safe also saved me. And I developed a keen awareness of everything and everyone around me. And you feel it. Trauma may be what really cultivates an empath's growth. But it was obvious to me that I had a mission. And when I was 7, my great aunt and uncle, who had 3 children, and their last one died of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And their family priest suggested that they consider adopting. And they said, well, we have a niece who's in New York City in a foster home, and we're thinking that we'll adopt her. Years later, like 3 weeks ago, I learned that when families lose an infant suddenly, it can be devastating to that family. And this one girl, I was speaking to a group of high school students and asking them about tragedies that they had experienced in their lives. And she said that she had a baby brother that was lost to SIDS, and it caused her parents to divorce. Well, when I was adopted, the first 3 years were very normal. But by the time I was 10, my adoptive mother, who was biologically my great aunt, became an acute, severe, chronic alcoholic. And my family life was very dark. And I was also kept locked in the castle. They were very, very rich. And it wasn't literally a castle, it was a historical mansion with 4 floors, an 8-car garage, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a formal dining room that sat 24 at a round table, a sunroom that sat 12 at an oval table, 3 living rooms, a law library, a formal ballroom on the 4th floor, and a bomb shelter and a full apartment in the basement. It was a historical mansion. And I was not allowed to use the phone. I was not allowed to go anywhere unaccompanied. I was not allowed to have friends over. I was not allowed to go to a friend's house. I was not allowed to have any social life outside of the private school education that I had, and to work in the family businesses. It wasn't until this girl at this high school told me her family divorced over SIDS that I realized what may have happened to my adoptive mother. And she was so resentful and mean and abusive. She said to me one day, we got you out of the gutter. Frankly, that's where you belonged. And the adult woman in me, who was always on guard, said, that's a horrible thing to say to a little adopted girl. And life was very dark. There's more that I won't speak of, but it was dark. But somehow I had this indomitable spirit. And I read a lot, and I talked a lot, and I read a lot. And when it was time to go to college, my family said, you have 2 choices. You may stay home and do dishes, which I had a PhD in already. They owned a private fishing club and swimming and boating and had a restaurant, and I always worked in that. And my father owned a huge construction company, and I was always working in the company businesses. So I knew how to handle the public. I knew how to make change. I was 10 years old. I went to business college when I was 10 years old. The dean of the dean of the college said, we've never had a student this young. Will she behave? And they said, yeah, she'll behave. And I had this great education. They said, you can stay home and do dishes, or you can be a nurse. Well, I wanted to be a doctor, but nursing was better than dishes. And so it was, on residence campus. So I'm in a dorm, and do you know what they let you do in a dorm? You can use the telephone. You can sign in and sign out. You can do things. You can have a life. And I was like, dang, this is amazing. There is life after the castle. So I went to, after your first year of nurses training, at that time, you could be a nurse tech and you could work nights or weekends. And life was a lot less expensive then than it is today. And I thought, I can emancipate myself. I am 18 and I can work weekends and I don't have to go home. And I emancipated myself at 18. And so then my senior year, I was doing a USO production of Bye Bye Birdie, put on by McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. And I met this airman who had just come back from Vietnam, and he played in the orchestra. He said, "Girl, you're a great dancer, but you can't project for diddly squat, but I could teach you." I said, "Okay, bring it on." Well, of course, we fell in love. We got married. We got pregnant. Our son was born 2 weeks before I graduated from college. I took the board exams. I got the highest scores ever. And we moved to Connecticut, where his family was from. And actually, his family was in Connecticut. We moved to New Hampshire, and where his brother lived. And so when our son was 6 months old, one morning he said what he did every day, "Okay, honey, I'll see you later." And that was 56 years ago, and I've never seen him since. So here I am. I'm 20, almost 21 years old. I'm a single mom. Early childhood abandonment was a significant trauma for me. And I'm just a wreck. And at that time, I worked 2 jobs. I was doing intensive care, coronary care, and I was a school nurse. And I don't know what I was thinking of, but I didn't go to work. I went to bed for 3 months and cried. And then one day I realized if I don't get my Fanny out of bed, my son's going to end up in the same place that I did. I need to get moving. And the reality is that boy was the greatest gift I could have gotten. And my 2 daughters, my 3 children, my grandchildren, they are the greatest gifts because love energizes believing. So when we love people, we'll do whatever it takes to make something happen. So I went back to school. I got 2 more degrees. I realized I was a hot mess. I got a therapist, which I highly recommend for everybody in the universe. I don't know how people get through without having a therapist because life gets dicey and we don't have all the answers and our families can help somewhat, but the professionals really make a difference. So I saw this therapist, Ruth Martin in Keene, New Hampshire, and she said, "Tell me about your family." And so I told her what I knew, and she wanted to know about my biological family, and I told her what I knew about my mother. And she said, "What about your dad?" And I said, "I don't know anything about my dad." And she said, "Well, what do you think about your dad?" I said, "I don't think anything about my dad. Why, should I?" And she said, "Yes, you should." I said, "Okay, I'll go home and I'll think about my dad." So since I was adopted by family, in 5 minutes, I'm on the phone with my biological father. 5 minutes. And he said, "I have been waiting for 20 years for you to contact me. By the time I found out where you were already adopted, and I didn't feel like I had the right to interfere with your life. So I have been waiting for you. May I come and see you?" Sure. So a week later, he flies from Colorado to Keene, New Hampshire. And I'm working on my 2nd and 3rd degree. And he says, I said, "So what's your story?" And he tells me, and it was not pretty, but he didn't make it about himself. And he said, "Everything bad that has happened to you is my fault. I am not the man today that I was then, but it's all my fault. And I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you in any way that I can." And what I found fascinating was that I think he could very well have shared the blame because when I met my mother, she was a hot mess as well. And he just handled himself with so much grace and dignity. And then he said something profound, which was life-changing. He said, "I want you to know how impressed I am with you. You're a single mom. You don't have any child support. You're going to school and getting your 2nd and 3rd college degrees. And you work, and you don't even have a car. You have a bicycle. I'm really impressed. But that's not why I love you." "Okay, why do you love me?" "Because you're mine." And no one had ever said those words before. No one had ever loved me unconditionally. In fact, just the opposite. And it was often very difficult to win approval. So my dad only lived 5 more years after that. But he made it his business every year for us to get together. He stayed in touch with me. There was a time when I was 2 months before finishing my 2nd and 3rd degree, I was just exhausted and I wanted to quit. And I said, "What difference does it make? I've already got a degree in nursing. I don't really need 2 more. And he said, "Don't quit. You'll always regret it." And he just encouraged me. I mean, he just wouldn't let it go. Don't quit. And I was so thankful that. And then when he died 5 years later, I was so aware of the brevity of time. Don't put off what's important. So then after a while, after I graduated and I was working for the VA as a psychiatric nurse, and I still only made $7,200 a year. And that's what I made before I got the 2 more degrees. And I thought that getting more education meant I'd get more money. I didn't even consider the fact that I should research this. I did some scholarship applications with some young people recently, and this girl was going to go to get a $300,000 undergraduate degree, working in a field that probably wouldn't pay her more than $60,000 or $70,000 a year. And I said, how are you going to pay off these loans? She hadn't even thought about it. Maybe there are other ways to accomplish your goal without spending $300,000.
My mom wanted me to go to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, which is an expensive college.
Right.
Like, it's very expensive. I wanted to go in for education. I'm like, I can't pay Vanderbilt tuition with a teaching degree.
You're much smarter than I was.
There's no way. Yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah, I almost went to the Modern in Dayton for graphic design, and he was like, "You only make like upwards of like $20 an hour." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I can't. There's no way.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, college is it's good, but it's terrible at the same time."
Well, I read books that said that women who want to make significant money, now you got to remember, these are in the 70s. Women who want to make significant money need to move to major metropolitan areas where the men who control the money will give it to them legitimately. That means you're not going to be in rural Ohio. You're not going to be a school teacher. You're not going to be a housewife. You're not going to be a nurse. You're not going to be a secretary. And those were the primary positions for women. And they said, you got to move to a major metropolitan area. So there I am. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I was in a relationship with a man who was also a Vietnam vet. And we were running a executive search firm. And he started it. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about anything. I just had good instincts. And we were doing very well. And we moved to Sarasota, Florida. And we did what were called career weekends, where we would find people in a local area that qualified for a particular job that might be off-site somewhere else and bring in the hiring staff rather than bring in all the candidates. So it was a great premise, and we were doing very well. And he also had PTSD, and I did not know it at the time. And something went off in him, and he beat the crap out of me. But when I was 10 years old, a very pivotal age, I read my mother's copy of Ladies' Home Journal, and it had a monthly column called Can This Marriage Be Saved? And it talked about when men who beat women, they kill them, either their spirit or their bodies. So if a man lays his hands on you in anything other than love, you get the hell out of there. I was 10 years old when I read this article. Now I'm like 22, 23, and I knew exactly what to do. And the next morning, I packed up my kid, the cat, and the bird, and got in my car. And he says, oh, by the way, all the assets are in my name and all the liabilities are in yours. Are you sure you want to leave? I said, I am. I have everything I need. I have my son and I have my life. See ya. And I made sure he never found me again. So I called some friends and I said, I need a place to stay for a few days. I called my son's grandparents in Connecticut. I said, hey, can you wire me $500 through Western Union? I'm in a little bit of trouble. And I called an executive search firm. And I told them what I did. And they said, oh, we have the perfect job for you. The world-renowned Dr. Dennis Waitley, who wrote The Psychology of Winning, the most highly published high-performance motivational psychologist, was looking for the vice president for the International Society for Advanced Education. And that was me.
That's awesome.
And he taught me the law of attraction. He taught me how to visualize. He taught me if somebody doesn't return your phone call immediately, it's not about you. They're just busy. Don't worry about it. Don't take things personally. Don't speak into being what you don't want to happen. He taught me so many principles of good thinking, and he transformed my life. And he passed away. I called him on his, I think it was 90th birthday, and he had died that day.
Gee.
This past year, yeah. He changed my life. He's in the dedication to my book. He changed my life. And so I realized, all right, I need to move to New York. Well, actually, I applied to law school. I got accepted, and then I did the math. I learned my lesson. I did the math. How much would it cost me to not work for 3 years? How much would tuition and room and board and taking care of my son? Oh, I can't afford that. So I sold everything I had. I put together $1,000. I moved to New York City with a 5-year-old boy, no job, no place to stay. And in 6 months, I was making $150,000 a year. In the 70s, that was a lot of money. Not so much today, but a lot then. So my life, and it seemed like every time something really dark and awful and hard happened, it was like the forerunner. It was like, now it's like, oh, something goofy happened. Oh, I wonder what's coming next, because something really, that was not fun. So something great must be on the heels of this. And so it's kind of transformed how I see when trouble happens. Take a deep breath. You have enough for today. It's okay. You got to stay quiet so that you know how to navigate it. So everybody has different faith structures, how they orient themselves in life. I don't care what people think. I mean, I happen to be a woman of faith, but I don't care. You figure out how life works for you. But I know for me, I just need to stay quiet, stay peaceful, and stay aware that it's all going to work out.
Right.
I don't have to get all wigged out over stuff.
So what brought you to Ohio then?
Oh, that's another divine intervention. So I was living in New York City and making buckets of money, and when my son was born, it hit me. I mean, so I'm a senior in college in a nursing program, right? It's 2 weeks before graduation. My water breaks on Monday. On Tuesday, they try to do induced labor. And Wednesday, they do a forceps delivery. And I'm really tired by the time this boy comes. So I go to sleep after delivery, and then I wake up and I have a son. I have a son. And it hit me. Oh my God, he's going to ask me the big questions, the big deep questions. And I don't know the answers to them. And I need to find the answers to the big deep questions. And I went on a search, the answers to the big deep questions. And a lot of my friends were Jewish, so I was studying with a Reform rabbi on the Lower East Side, and I put an ad in the New York Times for a housekeeper, and this woman answered it, and she was beautiful. She was an equity actress in between gigs. We're still friends today, and I said, "Who are you really? Because you're not the housekeeper. You are not the charwoman. Who are you really?" She was Palestinian. Her family founded Ramallah. She was stunningly gorgeous, toured in Fiddler on the Roof with the famous guy who did Fiddler on the Roof, and I can't forget diddly squat these days, but you know what I'm talking about. Zero Mostel? I think so. At any rate, she is just so talented and so beautiful. And she said, well, I also teach biblical research. And I said, I don't know how those words go together. I know the word Bible and I know research. And she said, well, if you're going to study the scriptures, you have to study the Greek, the Hebrew, and the Aramaic because they don't mean the same in today's translation. And so I'd ask her questions, and she'd open up her Bible, and she'd answer the question and say, how do you do that? How do you do that? You just open it up and turn to the page. She says, well, I've been studying for quite a while. And I was fascinated because every question that she asked me spoke to me. It might not speak to, I don't care. It just spoke to me. This was my journey, right? So next thing I knew, I was in the seminary for 4 years. Left my high paying, I worked for American broadcast companies. I worked for Time Inc. My voice is on so many commercials you would not recognize it, but you'd have to go back to the 70s. And they didn't hire me to do do recordings. They hired me to do business-to-business advertising. So, I was publishing medical journals, and I was calling on all the pharmaceutical houses in the U.S. To represent them in our group of medical journals that we publish. So I go to the seminary. I leave this enormously lucrative career where I could do anything I want, live anywhere I want. And at one point, I got to live in London. My son got to go to the same prep school that Prince Charles went to. Jeez. He could have married me. I mean, I was there then. He could have. I'm glad he didn't because I'm still alive. And I got to study at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. I got to dance with a ballet company. I got to study with Jane Fonda's acting coach. I got to get my hair done a lot, but you can't work there unless you work in a field that they have a shortage of. And I did not have those qualifications, so I couldn't work. So I came back to the States, and every time an opportunity would open, I just kept making more and more money. So I was so financially set. I mean, there wasn't anything I couldn't do. And I bought they call them co-ops. They're like apartments, but you own them, but you own shares in the building. And I got to buy one for like $120,000, and it recently sold for about $2 million on the Upper West Side. It's really nice. So I had a lot of adventures. I mean, these are just weird. I mean, I went there with a 5-year-old boy and no money and no job and no place to stay, right? And my life just imploded. It was just so exotic. And then I go into the seminary, and it wasn't about money. It was about, can I make a difference? Because I realized that I made all this money, but I didn't make a difference. And that mattered to me so much. If I can't make a difference, I don't want to do it. I got to make a difference. So I go into the seminary, I'm making a difference. I meet my girl's dad. We get married. We have 2 more. I was 41 and 43 when I had my daughters, thought nothing of it. Till the last one, I almost died, but I didn't. I'm thankful. And then I did that for about 25 years. And then we had a tragedy in our family, and my husband and I were separating, and I went to the church leadership and I said, you need to know we're separating. And they said, you need to know that if you do, you both will be fired from your very high profile jobs. And we were like, one of the top 12 in the ministry. And it wasn't pretty. And I said, oh, well, not my problem. And a friend of mine who had been through a fairly similar situation worked for a very major, large financial services company. And she said, with your business background, because I had a degree in nursing, psychology, theology, performing arts, and a master's in business, I did a Sloan Fellowship with London Business School. She said, I think that you would be a really good fit to be a financial advisor. And I said, financial advisor? Isn't that like being a used car salesman? I mean, really? She says, no, it's not like that at all. So I got to run a holistic practice because I had all this education as a minister, as a nurse, in performing. You don't let it go to waste, and I didn't set out to get 5 degrees or 6. That was not my goal. I didn't have, my 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. It just happened. So a lot of times I think that in life, we need to be able to go with the flow and make the best decision you can for today. And we think forward, but don't get too caught up in it. But as we consider, what does our life mean? So for me, making the change to go from the highly lucrative money-making fields to the nonprofit where you don't make any money, and then getting fired from that, like, oh, this is so interesting. I've given you 25 years of my life, and now when I need something, you're not going to be here for me. Oh, isn't that interesting? So I'm not a real big fan of religion, but I love relationship. I love God. I love people. I love relationship. I'm not a big fan of religion anymore.
Yeah, I think I grew up in a very religious family, and sometimes just the politics of the church is the issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the micromanaging.
Yeah.
So I'm working in the nonprofit. I've moved 65 times in my life, 65 documented times. And in my ministry responsibilities, that took me a lot of places. But even before that, I traveled a lot of places because I had wanderlust. I wanted to be a citizen of the universe. I wanted to see. I wanted to do. I didn't have any great connection to any place. People always ask me, where's your favorite place you've ever lived? I said, right where I am. That's my favorite, right where I am. So I was, and my ministry responsibility was in the New England region, and we were overseeing a large region. And the ministry that I worked for was headquartered in Ohio. And we got called into the home office. And then we got fired when I said that we're separating. And at that time, it was like, okay, I had 2 teenage daughters getting ready to go to college. I didn't have the resources. And when you work in the nonprofit, you really don't make any money. And having, spent 2.5 decades in the nonprofit, I didn't have the kind of wealth that I had. I didn't have any wealth. I didn't have anything. I was zeroed out, starting from scratch with 2 teenage daughters. And I said, well, I'll figure it out. And one thing led to another, and I got a job working as a holistic financial advisor. And in 17 years, I built a wonderful financial base that I could navigate for the rest of my life. And I would never have chosen Ohio. I would never have chosen Sydney. Somebody else knew that would be the place for me. And I am so, did you know that the volunteer rate in Sydney, Ohio is 3 times the national average? The
Yes.
heart of this
Really?
community is unbelievable. The heart is so beautiful. And yeah, we have a drug problem. Yeah, we have a homeless problem. We do have problems. We are not without problems. But the heart of this community is priceless. So I'm very, only he would have known. I'm glad to be here. I'm not leaving. You're stuck with me.
Yeah, it is tough because there's a lot of great things about Ohio, but Ohio has a drug problem and
Right.
a homelessness problem just as a state.
Right,
And then a lot of the smaller towns, it's really bad.
right.
But yeah, I think being in this area, there's so many great people around here that do a lot of volunteer work.
Yes.
Well, that's the crazy thing, because like you think about Ohio and especially like this area, like we're only known because of Dayton, you know, even though we're not really known. But like, including you, there's just so many people from like different spots around the world that are like here,
Right.
and it just makes you wonder what brings everybody to like this area. You know what I mean? Is there a specific like line in one of your books that like sticks out to you?
I think the thing that reaches me the most deeply is what I had mentioned earlier, that all of our getting comes from our giving, but it has to be out of a pure heart. And I realize that when I get stuck sometimes, when I can get out of myself, and I call it the 2-degree paradigm shift. And this was when I was a financial advisor. My company sent me all over the country to train other financial advisors. And that's where the title comes from. These newer financial advisors of all different ages would say, when does it get easier? I said, I can tell you the exact moment. And they said, you can tell each one of us the exact moment yeah. Well, would you tell us? Sure. It gets easier the moment you take your eyes off yourself and onto the person that you have the privilege to sit alongside of. There's no failing when you're trying to help someone else. But when your eyes are on yourself, your fear of failure, your fear of not making it, your fear that you won't have enough, then you become maybe double-minded in what you're trying to do. And it's all about you rather than, when I worked with my clients, it was, what do they need? I don't care if they bought or did any bit. I don't care. How can I help you today? So many times with my clients, because first of all, I'm a nurse. And I'm going to look, are your hands swollen? Are your feet swollen? Do you have any bruises? What medication are you on? I'm going to be looking at how are you? How are you physically? How are you mentally? How are you emotionally? When you're handling money, a lot of times as we mature, our adult children's needs sometimes can derail our retirement needs and goals. And knowing when we're enabling our children versus when we're really helping to make a difference in a crisis, those become very critical decisions, and our emotions play highly on our financial decisions. So for me, there was just such great joy in running a holistic practice because I realized this is not about me. That if I am a woman of faith and I'm crying because I'm afraid I'm not going to make it, well, what kind of faith is that? If I really am a woman of faith, well, then I'm not worried about diddly squat. So I am not going to let myself be in that position where I am worried about the future. I am going to be confident. I'm going to take care of the people that are in front of me, and my needs are going to be met. And I don't think it's Pollyanna. This is the depth of my core belief, is that when we keep our eyes on whoever shows up on our journey and how we can help them, we're on the right track. We'll be fine. My son would ask me during the hard time, he'd say, Mom, do you have enough for today? And I was damn determined. I'm not going to let my adult son bail me out of my fear. And the truth was, I had enough for today. And typically, we do have enough for today. I don't know what it's like to have no food, to have no shelter, to not have enough for today. I don't know what that's like. I do not know what it's like to live in a war zone. But my son has been to those war zones in his jobs. And I have so much respect for the question that he asked me so gently, Mom, do you have enough for today? And that trained me to recognize I do have enough for today. And then in time, everything just blossomed. But it wasn't overnight, and I had to cultivate that mindset that life is not about me. It's about the person that I get to sit with, and can I help them on their journey? That is probably, if there's one thing I would want anyone to take away, it's not about you. And I call it the 2-degree paradigm shift, because all it takes, it's moving your focus. You don't have to move your head. A 180, you got to turn your whole halfway around, right? You don't even, not even a quarter. You just shift your focus from here to there.
Yeah, I've had to go through a lot of leadership training for my job outside of this. And I think a big thing that I've taken away from it is what they call the servant leadership model, where it's not bossing somebody around. It's how can you help them do something instead of, oh, I need this done.
I love that.
Because then people aren't going to listen to you.
How do you feel when you exercise that?
I think it's really nice to see somebody do something that they could have done that they didn't think they could. That's one of the best things. Is just oh, I don't think I can get this finished today. And it's well, what can I do to help? You just achieve that goal,
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And don't you get so much satisfaction out of that?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's where the joy comes, is that when we realize that we make a difference. And I think where people get stuck is they realize they're not, it was a process. I had very, very real needs. I had to be able to support my son and then my daughters. I had to do it. There was no one else who was going to do it. And I was not going to forfeit that privilege to raise my children and to take care of them and to provide for them. So love energizes that believing to do what really looks like maybe impossible, but not impossible because you get it done. But in our own minds, sometimes the mountain is just so big. But when we do what we can each day, and then we get an idea and we follow up on the idea. I read books, and the books that I read told me what to do. In the 70s, women were not going to make it in smaller towns. If you wanted to make serious money, you had to do something big, and that was in major metropolitan areas. It may not be so much that way today, but it was in the 70s. So the courage to do that, it's oh my God, if any of my children were going to move to New York City with $1,000 and a 5-year-old by themselves and no job and no place to stay, I would be going crazy. And I just think of oh.
Yeah,
Being a mother is a great gift.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's tough now with the metropolitan areas, because if you go to New York with $1,000, you're not staying in a hotel for a couple of days. Everything's so expensive in those big places.
Well, they had a
places
YMCA
now.
or YWCA, and that was affordable to me at the time. And I never asked for a job. I knew one person there, and I said, do you know anyone who is successful in any field? Yes. Do you know 3? Yes. Would you be able to ask each one of them if they would have 30 minutes that I could just pick their brain? I want their advice. I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for advice. And I did that with each one. Within 3 days, I had 3 job offers. And within 6 days, I was working at American broadcast companies. And I had my pick of did I want to work in radio, print, or television. And I chose print because the person I was going to work for, I knew would mentor me. Nobody told me that. I intuitively understood it. And I thought it was in retrospect, it feels like a very unique process of looking for a job. I didn't go to an employment agency. And then, so I'm talking to this one guy, and he calls up the head of ABC, and he says, hey, I got this girl in my office. I want you to meet her. Can she come see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? Yeah. Can you go see him yeah, okay. And he said, okay, I want you to meet with this one, and this one, then come back and tell me who you want to work for and why. And boom, it was done.
Yeah, I think networking is one of the most important things when you're trying to make it somewhere.
Yeah.
Just who you know is really important.
Right. Yeah. And I think young, attractive people do not understand the power they have, because older people who have been through it are inspired to want to help. And when you can express yourself and you can be logical and you can be sound thinking and you're not emotional, you're just focused. You're focused on what you're doing. People want to help you. And when you get to be in that position of helping others, there's your payday.
I'm just blown away by your story and everything that you've been through.
I will tell you that I had to draw some boundaries with my adoptive family. When I was in the seminary, my adoptive father passed away, and I was in the middle of some really critical courses, and I could not go to the funeral. When my adoptive mother passed away, I was able to go home for the funeral. And I asked my siblings, we were having a debate about who was the favorite. And one of them said I was. And I said, no, I was not. This one was. We all had a different opinion who the favorite was. And I said, why do you think I was the favorite? And they said, well, because you never asked them for money. I said, they would never give me money. Why would I ask? Later, when they're settling the estate, I get a letter from the attorney with their will. It says, we have 4 children, 3 naturally born, 1 legally adopted. We leave our entire estate to our 3 naturally born children, and to our legally adopted daughter, we leave nothing. And I didn't care because I already had all the money I needed. It's like, whatever. But I realized that when people put you down, when they diminish you, when they don't approve of you, they don't elevate you, they don't edify you, they just hammer you, those are not your people. Yeah. And it's not, I mean, I can remember, I had my older sister, she has passed away. She was the light in the darkness. And I realized that there was all this darkness going on, but my sister was kind. She got the master suite. She had a private phone line. She said to me, you can use my phone if you want to. But I knew that if I got caught, I'd be in trouble, so I rarely used her phone. She had like 3 walk-in closets. I could go in and wear in, and she was so beautiful. She won a scholarship in a beauty contest and did a screen test with Elizabeth Taylor. She was so beautiful and so talented, and she was a teacher. And one day she said to me, you know, you have a very high IQ. I said, how do you know? She said, I had it tested. Okay, cool. She said, I think you should be a journalist. I said, what? A person who writes. I said, nah, not for me. Little did I know she was right. But she was kind. She would let me sit on her bed. She would stroke my hair. She was gentle. She was affectionate. She would advocate for me. She would go to our parents and say, if you don't let her date, how do you ever expect her to marry a Catholic boy? I didn't marry a Catholic boy. They wouldn't let me date. So she advocated for me. So I was having lunch with my daughters one day, and I was telling them about my older sister, and they said, have you ever told her how much she meant to you? I said, no, I haven't. So I called her up, and she was cold as ice to me. First time ever she was just matter of fact, okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, I'm done with all of you. But looking for the light, I think there's always someone or something when we're going through hard times. And if we can look at what's going right, and we really have to discipline our minds when things are wrong. I think becoming analytical about what are the challenges, what are you dealing with? And journaling to me is priceless. What are the facts? Get analytical about it. The facts are this, and this happened. All right. Is there any action you can take? Can you do anything about this, or this? For me, I look for verses of scripture that relate to my situation, and that's what I wrap my head around. And then I'm careful about what I say. I'm not going to, if somebody told me I had Parkinson's, I say, you can call it what you want, but I'm not having anything to do with it. I'm not going to own that. I'm not owning that. I'm going to own my health and my prosperity. I'm going to speak favor over myself. I'm not going to speak into existence what I don't want to happen. And a lot of times that's what we do when we have fear. We speak the fear into existence instead of what we want to happen. So we want to be really mindful about what we say about ourselves and what we say about other people, especially if we love them. Catch your people doing something well and praise them.
Yeah, I think being careful with what we say. I think we've talked about this with a different guest. People are going to remember that negativity.
Right.
So if you say something mean to somebody, even if it's just in a weak moment, they're going to remember that for 10 years. So you've got to try to focus on the positive stuff.
My son's wife, who is my daughter-in-love, is a mental health therapist, and she has been battling cancer for the past 5-6 years, and she is on it. Let me tell you what, she just is so amazing. My daughters are so amazing. They each have gone through, you don't get through life without tragedies and hard things happening, some really difficult things happening. And when we can stand alongside of each other and we can love and support and encourage one another, and when we're going through a growing phase, we may not be our best or do it all exactly right, but we don't want to focus on what we're doing wrong. We want to focus on what we're doing right, and then encourage what is going right. Encourage, edify, build up. We don't want to tear down. So if we have kids, let them overhear us brag about them to our spouse or our friends or neighbors, brag about secondhand compliments are really nice. So we want to lift each other up.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to get you a book, where would they be able to find it?
Oh, it's easy. It's on Amazon, and you can get it in hardback, paperback, and the audiobook came out a couple of months ago.
Incredible.
And the audiobook, my friends say who read the book say, I can hear your voice, my friends, right? And others who prefer audiobooks say, oh, it's just like, it's a quick read. You can read it in a couple of hours. You can listen to it in an hour and 45 minutes. So Amazon, all three forms.
Okay. Did you have anything that you would want to leave with people that might want to take a creative, approach a creative venture, but they're a little bit worried about it or hesitant?
I love that question. I think that it's really important in life. I mean, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to have food and shelter. If you don't have that, you're not going to last very long. And then the things that we want to do to make a difference are lower on the list. But to me, those become the most important ones. Okay, so you got to eat, you got to have housing, you got to have clothing. But if you don't make a difference, it doesn't really matter. And if you haven't had enough experience finding out what you're gifted at, you don't know. I did not set out to get 5 degrees. I did not set out for 6 professional careers. I was a nurse. I was a business owner. I was a dancer. I was a model. I was a holistic financial advisor, and now I'm writing books. That was not my vision or my plan. Let life come to you, but pay attention. And when you do enough things, like when my youngest daughter decided to go to college, she said, I'm not going to college right out of high school because I have no idea what I want to do. I want to work in different fields, and I'm not going to accrue student loan debt when I have no idea if this is a field to be in. So she worked in a lot of different fields. Well, then she got a call one day. She could get a free ride to go to Edison to play volleyball. 2 years. Well, my other daughter went to Miami of Ohio, and that was like a $140,000 degree. 2 years, that'd be 70. Oh, yeah, you can come be on my payroll. Go to Edison. When she graduated, she said, I'm going to go to Australia for a year and be a nanny. I said, good for you. Do you mind if I don't visit? Because my jet lag will just keep me there for a month, She said, no, I'll be home in a year. Well, she ended up staying 3 years, but she came home every year. And she had learned a lot about herself, had a great adventure, got to work as a travel agency once her contract for the nanny thing was finished. She had some great adventures. My daughter, who went to Miami of Ohio, became a tattoo artist, and she has her own business in Salt Lake City, Utah. And she makes beautiful art on skin. She's just so talented. And I watched them both grow, but they've grown because they've tried different things. And now they're clear, they get more and more clear about what they want and who they want to have it with and what kind of a life they want. But if you don't try different things, you don't know what you want. So try things. But when you find out what you are uniquely gifted at, I could do this all day, every day, helping people. I did keynote speeches all over the country. I still do them today. I love being able to help it. One of the things when you have an audience is to engage them. So when you have an interaction, we're much more vested. So we want to be sure that we're drawing people into, I love to hear what people's tragedies are and how they've navigated it. And it builds a bonding. There's therapy that takes place in a collective setting. So as you're going through stuff, be analytical about it, be solution-oriented, and refuse to lose your peace over it. Because if you lose your peace, you lose your power. And you don't want to lose your power, so you can't lose your peace. So when you're mindful of what do you really want to do with your life. I had a patient when I was 18 who had a terminal illness, and he knew he was dying, and I knew he was dying. And I asked him, how does it feel? He said, if I knew then what I know now, I would have made a lot of different choices. And that, before the term bucket list came into popularity, I had one of all the things I ever wanted to do in life. And when it showed up on my journey, I'd say, I'll do that, thank you. I'll do that. I'll do that. So being mindful of what would you like to do with your life? And how do you want to make a difference? What kind of mark do you want to leave? And what brings you joy? But when you find what you're gifted at and you put it together with your work, magic happens. And I mean, I look at you guys, you love what you're doing, all three of you, guys and gals. I see what you're doing and I can see the joy in your faces. And when you get to do that, you're on to something. So don't get discouraged.
Yeah. Okay, did you have any other questions, Eric?
No, you answered a lot of them, just telling your story and everything, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on our show, the Jellyfish Manifesto.
It was my privilege. Thank you for having me.